Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
We are speaking with Pat McManus, of course, from the Pat McManus Band. Some of you might remember him, of course, from Mama's Boy, a great, great European band. Lots of talent, lots of great music, and, of course, as we say here in Montreal, bonjour, Pat. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much, Mitch. Nice to be talking to you, man.
Yeah, and, the other day on my Twitter feed, the @Mitch Lafon, I put a picture of Mama's Boy, and I said, hey, I'm going to be talking to Pat soon. And the reaction, I mean, I was expecting a reaction, but it was overwhelming. People were just like, oh, man, I love that band. They're so great. And then a whole bunch of people were posting tickets, and I saw them in this place, and I saw them in that place. And so, hey, a lot of great love for what you've done. But let's talk about the new album, Full Service Resumed, available October 8th. You can get that at patmcmanus.co.uk. Let's talk about that album. Talk to me about this new Full Service Resumed album.
Well, it's all in the title, really. You know, it was recorded, Mitch, during the lockdown period here. You know,
right? It
was the lockdown was quite severe here, so you know there wasn't much. There was definitely no shows or no gigs, you know, and there still isn't any, really, to be honest with you. It's just beginning to open up. So, you know, there's only so many times you can go around and paint the house and mow the lawn and cut hedges, and so I was still left, you know, sort of twiddling my thumbs, as they say, and I needed something to get stuck into. So I thought, hey, you know, it's about time I was going to do another album anyhow, so I better knuckle down and start putting some ideas together, and the Full Service Resumed album was the result of that. You know, it was during the lockdown. It was a difficult period for everybody, in particular for musicians, because, you know, I'm used to doing somewhere in the region of, you know, between Ireland, UK and Europe, doing 150 shows a year.
Wow.
And you know, just, yeah, you know, and suddenly for that to stop overnight, I really didn't know what to do with myself, you know, because that's really my bread and butter. That's where I earn my money, and being on the road like that there. So I thought I'd better put it to good use, and sort of took a little, with the time that I had free on my hands, I recorded and wrote the songs and recorded the album.
That's great. Now, the deluxe edition includes 4 previously unreleased, or 4 bonus versions of Mama Boy songs, including Belfast Boy, Too Little of You to Love, Hard-Headed Ways, and Belfast City Blues. Talk to me about those. Have you reimagined them, reworked them? Are these demos that you had sitting on a cassette and you just said, hey, I'll just throw them on there?
No, Mitch, what actually was, those songs were part of the very early Mama's Boys catalogue of albums.
Right.
The first 2 albums first 3 albums we actually did, to be quite honest with you, was self-financed, done by ourselves. We had no record company advance, no record company help. What we did was we kind of saved up all the money that we were making from the little shows that we were doing around Ireland at the time, and put that whole money into spending a couple of days in the studio. So some of the songs on those first 3 albums never seen the light of day as regards to an international release. So somebody said to me, wouldn't it be nice to go back and remix those tracks again, you know, and sort of bring them up to date? But when I actually went to look for the master tapes of those albums, they're gone. You
right.
know, they disappeared. They just disappeared. I don't know whether somebody threw them out or the studio erased them. I really don't know. So all I was left with was a couple of very very worn cassette tapes. So I listened to the tracks a couple of times, and then I reinterpreted them then, and sort of, you know, kind of brought the music sound production up to date. So I thought it was a nice touch just to put a couple of those old tracks on there and remind people of what we were doing when we were young.
When we were young, yeah. And it's a great little a bonus for the fans to have. Now, what fans don't know who are listening is that we tried to do this interview yesterday, and we had this long conversation about Frank Marino, and then the computer shut down and everything was lost.
Well, you know, I grew up, you know, listening to Rory Gallagher, Gary Moore, and Frank Marino. Those Frank was, in my eyes, one of the greatest guitarists and artists to tread the boards ever, you know. And he was a total inspiration to me growing up. I had all his stuff, you know, and you know, I used to sit there and I listened to the live album, and I just sit there and imagine what was going on, because you know there was no YouTube or you couldn't stream anything live. So I didn't really, you know, all I had was a few pictures of what was on the albums and stuff like that. But you know, he really touched me as a guitar player, and I think in many respects, you know, Frank is the missing link between sort of the 70s rock guitar players and what was to come later on with the Steve Vais and the Joe Satrianis and the Yngwie Malmsteens of this world. I don't think without Frank you would have got that, you know, because he definitely was a truly inspirational musician. And, you know, and from what I've seen and what I've heard, a truly inspirational and nice person as well, you know. So, you know, it was quite a learning curve for us, because I grew up in a background of playing traditional Irish folk music, you know,
right.
And believe it or not, you know, I gravitated then when I started to learn the guitar. I gravitated towards the blues rock thing. You have to remember, here in the UK and in Ireland, you know, the punk thing was happening very, very big at the time, but that didn't Mitch appeal to me at all. You know, and it was right in my generation as well. You know, we were young enough just to admire the likes of those bands, the Sex Pistols and whatever, you know. So, but it wasn't what lit our fire at all. Myself and my three brothers, it was people like Frank and the Thin Lizzys and the Rory Gallaghers of this world that really, lit the fire. And I think because it was blues based, and it's a roots music, and Irish traditional folk music is a roots music, I think there was a common thread that sort of runs through all indigenous music like that there. Don't ask me what it is, but it's there, you know. And it was something, when I heard Frank's music and Rory's music and Thin Lizzy, it was something we really related to quite easily.
Of course. In fact, let me first of all, you're very right about Frank being super nice. I mean, he lives down the street. I've been to his house. He is just so courteous, so kind, so welcoming. In that vein of guitarists that sort of brought it to the next level or were doing something different, at that time in the 70s, we also had Uli Jon Roth. And Uli and Frank are sort of similar in the way they approach the guitar and sort of, you know, they approach the music business. Were you also an Uli fan, and did he sort of light your fire?
Believe it or not, big time, and I'm a good friend of Uli's. We do some shows together.
Yeah, he's great.
You know,
Uli's awesome.
Yeah, we do in Europe. You know, I think Uli. That's interesting that you said that. You know, because I have this conversation with Uli about Frank. You know,
yeah.
And Uli was so gracious and you know, said he was, you know, just a totally, and I think he brought him out to Europe on a couple of occasions to play with him, you know. And so yes, Uli would have been I would have been a big fan of Uli's as well. Both Uli and Frank, to me, were the guys that are the missing links with that neoclassical and the advancement of the guitar playing that we know today. Without those two guys, I don't think you would have had it in the same way. I really genuinely don't believe that. I believe that truly to be true, you know. They were totally awe-inspiring. And, you know, I never forget when I first heard Uli play with the Scorpions. It was just like, wow, this is just taking it to another level altogether, you know. So between Uli and Frank, I was listening to good stuff, you know.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with In Trance or Mahogany Rush. I mean, you just can't.
Well, to be honest with you, Mahogany Rush were my favourite.
Yeah, I mean they were an interesting band, and it's funny how in Canada we had Mahogany Rush, and people always confused the two. It was kind of funny. Let me get back. Let me get over to Mama's Boy just in a quick sense, because you know you are doing the Irish stuff. You're doing, I guess, sort of the whiskey in the jar kind of inspirational stuff with the fiddle and all this. How do you transition into sort of a hard rock, and I don't want to say metal, but how do you sort of transition into that sort of hard rock kind of vein? Because you were lumped in with the new wave of British heavy metal, and I want to talk to you about that in a second, because that's another sort of bizarre lumping in, if you ask me. But
Well, it wasn't that difficult. A band that the very first band that I actually seen playing was a band called Horselips, and they were a rock band, but they were a fusion band which integrated the Irish music with it. And these guys were really, really clever the way they did it, And it really, because I seen myself as a folk purist, and I mean I'm talking heavy traditional Irish music. There's the commercial end of Irish music that everybody knows, but I'm talking about the real tradition, and that's what I was really into, So when I seen these guys play for the first time with loud bass guitars and drums and stuff, but they were infusing the real hardcore traditional Irish music into what they were doing, and they had it weaving throughout the songs and in the makeup of their songs, and that really instantly appealed to me because, number one, I understood it. I think if I'd gone and seen Led Zeppelin at that stage, I'd have said forget it, because I did consider myself a folk purist. I was aware of other types of music, but I wasn't particularly listening to it, I was immersed in that tradition, but it wasn't until I seen them and I thought, hey, the possibilities here are fantastic. And I kind of went home after seeing them. They played in our local town, and I told my brothers about it, and I dragged them back the next night to see this band play, and we were all hooked. And then I said, well, I'm buying an electric guitar, and I delegated out the rest of the instruments to the lads. I told John, my brother, you're on bass and singing, and Tommy, you're drumming. They really had no choice in it, but that's how it really evolved, so to speak, So, and it was a learning curve for us as well, because we hadn't grown up listening to those type of bands and listening to Rory Gallagher and listening to Thin Lizzy and Depot. We hadn't. It kind of passed us by. And I think Zeppelin were even broken up at this stage. They weren't even together when we got into all of that. So it was a huge learning curve. And it purely started out completely as fun. There was no ulterior motive to it. There was no, let's get up there and be big stars. That never was the motivation for us to get out on the road and play. We just wanted to emulate now our heroes that we had and just try and copy what they were doing. And we didn't really realize there was an industry there, that you could be part of. It just didn't dawn on us. It just passed us by. So right. It was a pretty much sharp learning curve for us, and we were still learning as we went along, even though we started to do quite well in Ireland and stuff like that there. It was probably because the kids were starved here. You have to remember also that the kids were starved of live music, Mitch, because, we had the Troubles here at the time, so no bands would come over here and play, so you could only read about them in magazines and maybe see the odd time when there'd be an odd appearance on television. So, that's all we had. So when we took up the mantle then, all the kids of my generation, they used to all come out and see us play, So that was a great inspiration to us to continue on. And that's really one thing led to another then. And that's how it's really started for us and how we got into doing the hard rock stuff.
So let me ask you about that, because Ireland was, of course, it was... I don't want to say that it was under terrorist threat. I mean, or is that what it? I mean, it was tough. It was there was bombings.
Everybody was affected by it.
Right.
Everybody. It was, you were living under this shadow and a cloud all the time. And as kids, you're aware of it, but you know what you's like. You just shrug it off. But it was a tough time. It was not a pleasant time here.
No, not at all. And I know that as a Kiss fan, every so often Kiss fans will say to me, they've never played Ireland. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, when it was, cool and happening for them, it was a dangerous place to go. But let me ask you about Mama's Boy in terms of, because you mentioned industry. You were around until 93. Yeah. You had the singles. You had the Mama We're All Crazy Now. You had all this stuff. And yet, North America, in terms of major success, seems to have eluded you. And, you talk to bands like Thunder and Status Quo, and North America seems to be this tough nut to crack. What was it about North America that you just couldn't get that foothold? You couldn't get that MTV play. You couldn't get that arena run. Why was North America difficult for Mama's Boy?
Well, there was a number of reasons. being why it was difficult for us, because number one, the main thing was that my brother Tommy kept getting ill. Right, and Tommy suffered from leukemia from he was 9 years old, so he would have a relapse, and in the end, the remission periods that he was getting were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And actually, we were on a Canadian tour when he relapsed again, and we had to come home. It was one of those things where we started to get a reputation where agents and promoters and record companies were going, well, we don't know. We can't book this band in advance. We can't organize a tour because we don't know if they're going to show up or not. And that was a major problem for us. And all we wanted to do was get our brother better again. Yes, we've done a couple of very successful tours of North America with Rat and Twisted Sister and various other bands. It was phenomenal. Bon Jovi. We were really on a cusp, and it was really going well. Really going well, but then Tommy got ill again, and we had to come home, and it was the best part of 2 years. We were sitting idle, not totally idle, but idle, so we couldn't until he got better again, and we always said to him, because you have to remember that the band was his lifeblood. He just lived for the band, so we would say it. He said, we just have to get somebody else. And we said, no, we're not getting anybody else. Tommy, you're a brother. Just you get better, and we'll hit the road again and try and start things up again when you're better. But as you well know, Mitch, in the crazy world of the music industry, 2 years is a long time to take out, we were turning down tours, saying, no, we can't do them, and it really... then agents and promoters and that became afraid to book us because they just thought, well, these guys mightn't turn up or they might go home in the middle of a tour. So the phone stopped ringing in that way, So it was a number of situations that led to, what happened to the band at the end of the day. But, what price your health? All we wanted to do was to get our brother in good form and back to full health again. So we would take those little snippets out when we should have really been pushing hard. And I think it would have we would have made inroads there. We definitely would have made inroads there because we got such a reception there already. People knew who we were. It was a matter of us getting our act together and getting a proper an album out that would get on the radio, Not that we particularly tried to get on the radio, because I just think if you try to go for that form, you can ruin yourself, But having said that, you get all kinds of peer pressure and record company pressure to try to get that. You know the story, I'm sure.
Of course, they bring in the songwriter and they bring in the hip producer at the time, and the AOR guy comes down and. I have to say, by the way, I do have a lot of respect for you for having stuck by Tommy, because he was a brother, but he is a band member, but it is the music business, and you do have to move along. And instead of giving in to that, instead of saying, you know what, we're going to go do wild parties and women and be on MTV, you said, you know what, my brother's sick, and that's the priority. And that's just, there's a lot of respect for that, because a lot of people would have gone for the glory and said, hey, we'll check in on you when we get back from the tour, and you didn't do that. And
no, we didn't. No one wouldn't dream of it. We're three country lads, Mitch, from a farm in County Fermanagh, and there was no way we were ever going to do that. And now we actually did, to be honest.
Well, you had Jimmy DeGrasco for a while.
Yeah, we were actually contractually obliged to finish a tour which we could not get out of. There was hell to pay, Right. We tried to stop it, and they said, absolutely no way is this going to happen. We've advertised you owe us thousands, So, being the little band that we were, we didn't have much money, so this is where Jim stepped into the picture and helped us out,
Yeah, Jim's a great guy, great drummer. He also drummed for Megadeth and Rad eventually. Was that strange though, because it was a contractual obligation, as you said? Was there any sort of, I don't want to say hate towards Jimmy, but was there any sort of like, ugh, you son of a gun, because that does happen. You look back and you don't see your brother, and you're being forced to do this. That can lead to these sort of emotions of, rightly or wrongly, of ugh.
You know something? I haven't looked back. Jim was so gracious and such a great, awesome drummer. He came in at really, really short notice because we were really trying to pull this, and the record company said, you cannot do this, you know. So Jim came in on a 2-week short notice, actually flew from America to Northern Ireland and stayed at our house with our family, with our mum and dad. And we yeah, really, really. And he was just absolutely awesome. If ever there was a brother, he was one of them. He was just totally, you know, he was such a good guy and such a great musician. And, you know, after the first 4 or 5 days rehearsing together, he had the set together. You know, it was a support we were doing. We were actually guesting with Gary Moore in Europe. And Jim can tell you all about that, you know, if you're ever speaking to him. But Jim really, really, and no, there was no animosity. It was strange to look up there and see Jim behind the kit. But, you know, he gave such a great account of himself. He really, really did. I mean,
he's great.
He doesn't need me or anybody. They all know the quality of Jim, you know, a total professional and a totally awesome musician. So it slotted in and gelled really, really well, you know. I was really surprised, you know. And all I have is great memories from that time, Mitch.
Here, in fact, I was going to follow up. I'm going to change the course here and ask you a different question. And I want you to confirm or deny or explain. You, of course, had a cover of Slade's Mama We're All Crazy Now at the same time, essentially, that Quiet Riot had Mama We're All Crazy Now. And my understanding over the years has been, and this could be completely wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told that Quiet Riot then sued you for having the same, and it just never made sense to me. How could they sue you?
No, nothing like that at all. Absolutely nothing like that at all. And in fact, to be quite honest with you, you've got to realize, Mitch, at the time we did that song, we thought it would be a great idea, seeing that we were called Mama's Boys, to do the song called Mama We're All Crazy Now. And it was purely coincidence. We're living in the sticks here in Ireland. We weren't aware of what was going on in the music industry. Yes, we were aware of Quiet Riot, but we had no idea that they were going to do the song. Really none, you know. And didn't really care either, you know. You know, so it was just purely coincidence that really happened. And no, there was never animosity towards any of us.
Okay,
or us towards them, you know. They were a great band that sold millions of records, a super band. So, you know, there was never anything. And, you know, it was just one of those things that happened at the time.
That's just weird,
you know?
Okay. Yeah, because somebody said to me, Quiet Riot sued them. And I was like, how? It's not their song, so that doesn't make sense. And
absolutely, nothing like that ever occurred, you know.
Okay, yeah, because I've had this story in my head for years, and I've always been, but that doesn't make sense. There's no cause for litigation. There's none. Okay.
They might have been a little bit annoyed with us for doing it, all right, but it really wasn't done in
spite, or it was accidental.
It was purely accidental, yeah.
You mentioned Thin Lizzy a couple of times. You, of course, toured with Thin Lizzy on their farewell tour in 1983, I guess, something like that.
Yep, that was it, Mitch. Yeah.
And what I love about that is a couple of things. First of all, it was a farewell tour, and in 2022, Scott Gorham has already announced that the band will do some shows. So, you know, 40 years later, the reunion tour is still going. The second thing is Kiss announced a farewell tour in 2000. And they keep going, and people always bash them like, oh. But you know what? Thin Lizzy, The Who, Ozzy Osbourne, they've all done reunion tours 30, 40 years ago. But that said, what was that like? Because I don't want to say that was sort of the down end of Phil, but talk to me about that and being around Phil if you ever got to see him, because when we talk musical genius, yes, we talk Frank Marino, yes, we talk Uli Jon Roth, but I think Phil's in that discussion too, right?
He most certainly is, you know, and I'll tell you a funny story about how we actually met Phil. I mean, we were huge Thin Lizzy fans, you know. We were so proud of them. They came out of Ireland, you know, and as I said, there wasn't much going for Ireland around that time, you know. So all my generation of kids, you know, growing up, we really, you know, looked to them as people that proved something to you, that you could actually get out of Ireland and make something of your life, because it was pretty dismal here. So as it transpires, we were actually playing at a festival in Ireland. Don't laugh now. It's a matchmaking festival. And yes, there we are, stuck in the middle of this matchmaking festival, playing a gig with our brand of rock. And Philip Lynott happened to be actually doing the same little festival. He was doing a solo career thing at the time. And he came down the festival site when he was coming in getting preparing for his show. And he came up because he knew our manager at the time. And he listened to the band on the side of the stage. And he said to Joe, who was our manager at the time, Joe, he said, "Who are these guys?" And he says, "Oh, they're a little band. They're just starting up, and I think they have potential." And he says, "They bloody well have. These guys sound great." And he offered us there and then the chance to go on the farewell tour. He says, "I'd love to have them come on the farewell tour with us when we say farewell to everybody." And really, that was our beginning. That was the first major breakthrough we had, and it was thanks to Philip for doing that. So we got to know Philip really, really well. He of course, it led to the tour, and he would come in every night and he would sit us down. Honestly, he'd watch our show and he'd tell us what we thought we did really well and what he thought we'd done really badly as well. So it was a big learning curve, Mitch. We didn't know anything about stagecraft or how to present yourself to people. And Philip, said, "Look, I'm just passing on the mantle here because I've been through the same, so I'm giving you a shortcut to all of this." And he would come in and listen to us, and he really firmly took us under his wing and really helped us, project ourselves. And if it wasn't for that tour, I don't think we would have ever really got out of Ireland, to be quite honest with you.
Hi, thanks to Phil. All right, so let me get over to this, my favorite topic here, the new wave of British heavy metal. And whenever I ask Joe Elliott or Phil Collin or any of the Def Leppard guys, they all go, "Oh, no, stop it. But here you are with, Ethel the Frog and Tigers of Pantang and all these bands. By the way, I think every band had to have an animal, right? We had the tigers, we had the leopards, right? Talk to me about that, because Jeff Barton, who wrote, of course, for Kerrang and Sounds, is pretty much the one that sort of came up with this thing. And it sort of started to mean sort of really dark and death metal-y and somber kind of music. And that's not Mama's Boy, and that's not Def Leppard. So how did you get lumped into that? And does it hurt the career to be part of the movement? Or does it... No, okay. Or does it help the career?
So, because, it was a new way, it was a marketing ploy on behalf of the magazines and the record companies. As far as we were concerned, we didn't really mind. We weren't going to stand up there and say, "Oh no, that's not what we're about." It was a marketing ploy on those on behalf of those record companies and the magazine to give it a new angle. So if they lumped us in with that was okay. We didn't really mind. We didn't really understand it anyhow.
Yeah,
I'm painting ourselves out to be really dumb here, but it's the case, I mean, as I said earlier on, it was a big learning curve for us. We hadn't access to Kerrang magazines and all that at the time. It just, yes, we did later on, but at the beginning we weren't aware of Sounds magazine or Melody Maker, right, until somebody said they're coming in to interview us, and we're going, "Who are these guys?" "Oh, they're from a big magazine in England called Sounds," and we're going, "Oh, okay." So it didn't really bother us. We were just glad that someone took the time to mention us, and as it transpires, actually, we're the only band from Ireland at that period of time in the rock genre that actually got signed.
Oh, wow.
In the end. All the rest that were around, which weren't many, but there was, of course, Sweet Savage, which was Vivian Campbell's band.
Mm-hmm.
And Vivian was the only other guitar player of my age that I knew as well, and he was totally awesome, He was more towards Belfast. You've got to realise we were sort of 100 miles northwest of Belfast, out in the country, So, Viv was the only other person I knew that really had his chops going down and really had a great band at the time as well, And that's one of the things that really surprised me, was that Vivian's own band never got signed. I could never quite understand that, because we did a few shows together in the very early days with Mama's Boys and Sweet Savage, and they were just like jaw-droppingly good. It was like, here we come, these local yokels from the middle of the countryside, and up we come, and here's these guys that have the image and the music and the chops, and we're going, oh my God, these guys are brilliant.
But I'm just trying to imagine the bills back in those days. You've got Venom, Satan, Witchfinder, General, Blitzkrieg, and then, hey, it's Mama's Boy. Did that name cause any concern for you, by the way? Like, because of the American connotation of you're a Mama's Boy? Like, did that...
Well, it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing. What's in a name, really,
Right. Well, a lot in marketing, a lot in the music business. You get the wrong band name or the wrong artwork on an album cover, and it can derail a career.
Well, yes, and possibly, looking back on it now, you're possibly absolutely correct there. If we had been Heavy This or Poison that or something like that, there it probably would have worked.
Or Mama's Devils or Satan's Boys.
yeah, exactly. But we just thought it was tongue in cheek, and it was really funny because we were the exact opposite of what the name said.
The so connotation, right?
A clever thing, but it in retrospect now, probably looking back, it didn't really help us.
Well, I'm just because I think of it from the American perspective. If you're on a football team, an American football team, not a soccer team, and you go, hey, you're a Mama's Boy, that ain't a compliment. So that's
I guess it isn't.
No. When the band finally disbanded, it had, of course, everything to do with your brother's passing. Since that time, has there ever been a thought of maybe we'll go play a show in his honor, maybe we'll go do a set of all this music, maybe we'll give it one more thing and do it in his memory, or is it like, no, it's not the band, he's not here, forget it, we're done?
We John and myself and my brother John, we decided there and then when Tommy passed that was it.
That was it.
And there was no going back on it. And yes, we've been asked numerous occasions, promoters in Japan, all over Europe, just chomping at the bit, going, come on, you guys can do it, but we don't want to do it. I want to leave the memory as it was. It was what it was at the time. Without him being there, it wouldn't work. Yes, we've done one show. I will admit that we did a charity show in Belfast about 8-9 years ago, where my brother John just got up and did a few songs with my band,
right,
just in the set. And other than that, that's the only time we've and he couldn't even remember the lyrics to the song. I was whispering them in his ear as we were doing it.
No, but I mean it's a little bit like Led Zeppelin and John Bonham. I mean, there are some things that should be special and should be, this is what it is, and if it's not that, then it's not that. It's not going to happen.
Exactly, and we all move on in life as well,
Yeah.
and you all get different things to do, and you get consumed with living and everything else like that there. So, as I said, the opportunity, but it didn't feel right to us to try and go out. And I know there was a lot of bands in the last few years that have got back together again and they're going out on these nostalgic tours, and we could have got any amount of those. But, for me, that's not what the band was about. The band was three brothers. I say we were an ear and our man's delight because, three brothers, it was the first boy band, I always say.
Well, wasn't that the Beatles? Weren't the Beatles the first boy band? Let's be honest.
Yeah, but three brothers? Oh, no.
No, you were, that's right, you're the Irish Menudo.
Exactly, Mitch. So, having said that, I just felt it, and my brother felt the same, that, leave those memories alone. They were great memories, and, people, I didn't want to do it without my brother Tommy being there, it just didn't sit right with us,
And again, I will throw the respect card your way, because so many people would have taken the cash. So many people, especially in the 80s, they would have taken the booze and the ladies and the whole thing, and you're about the brotherhood.
Believe you me, Mitch, I could do with the cash.
Yeah, I know. And listen, you could solve that problem by saying, okay, Udo in Japan, Mama's Boy is coming for a 10-show tour, and they would pay you handsomely. But your brother's not there, and you're not going to do it. And I have ultimate respect for that.
Yeah, and I totally, you can't call it the Mamas because, that's all it ever was the three brothers, It wasn't anything else other than that. There'd be no personnel changes at all in the band. There were never going to be any personnel changes in the band because we were three brothers for a start. So, that just wasn't going to happen. So when one of them, when that came apart, with his passing, that was it as far as we were concerned, So we knocked it on there.
As it should be. It's the right choice. Let me remind the folks that the Pat McManus Band full service resumed is available now at patmcmanus.co.uk. And as we say here in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, and thank you for coming back after yesterday's disastrous computer meltdown that we had and couldn't record. But very gracious.
An absolute pleasure to talk to you, man. And give my love to Frank Marino and his family and tell them we're all praying for him here.
Yeah, and if folks haven't heard, Frank canceled his tour because he's ill. So everybody just throw some thoughts his way, and let's keep the music alive. Merci. Thank you. That was great.
Okay, merci. Thank you, Mitch. God bless.
All right.